Run a boy thing. She thinks that she bad, she thinks that she all that. Fall back, me give her a call, she not call back. She said she left me, but more time she crawl back. Girl I move spicy, me and where the salt at. Girl I feel went up and I rollin' body body. And all them and them have to hold them body body. Everything you told me never told nobody body. You say your man can't control your body, so make her rock your body. Rock your body, 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 rock your body.
Hey y'all, if this is your first time on my channel, you are welcome. If you're a returning watcher, what's poppin'? How you doing? What's up? Today I'm going to be doing like a Q&A about being at Stanford. I've gotten a lot of questions about it, and some are more like, they have such big answers, I can't like write them. I've gotten Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger stuff. I've gotten like all sorts of like emails and stuff. And I'm going to answer your questions today. All of them. Well, not all of them. Hopefully most of them. Yeah, probably most of them. But I'm going to try my best. And the questions are not in order. So I apologize if the order of the questions don't seem relevant to each other. I just kind of like bunched them all together. With no further ado, let's get into the video. So the first question is, what was your initial reaction when you got into Stanford? Okay, so basically, this is a while back. So by the time I had heard back from Stanford, I had already been rejected from Harvard and Williams College. So at this point I didn't have high expectations from Stanford. I was just kind of like, I'm gonna just take this L and I'm gonna go to Tufts, Boston University, or Northeastern, and I'm gonna live a good life. I'm gonna still be a doctor. It's gonna be good. So I wasn't really expecting much. I expected to get rejected from Stanford as well. So I had gotten the email before I got like the package in the mail. So I got the email, and you know when you tell yourself you're not going to open something, but because you're too anxious, you still open it anyways? I was like, I'm going to just open this email. So I opened it, and I don't like, what did I even see? I don't even remember. It was like, I don't even remember what the first letters were, but like, I knew it was an acceptance. So I started screaming. I was like, oh my God, I'm jumping up and down. I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, Sean, okay. And like my dad, this was in the living room. My dad was like at the computer place, which is like also in the living room. And I was like, Daddy, guess what? He was like, what is it? I was like, I got into Stanford. And he's at his little computer chair. He's like, and so? And I was like, bruh, you not gonna rain on my parade, Mr. Adebayo. So I was like, Daddy, I don't think you understand. This is one of the best universities in the world. And at the time, my dad wasn't too familiar with other schools outside of Boston. And like in his head, like Harvard was a really good school, whatever. So like it took some warming up, but you know, he finally realized that I got accepted into like a pretty good school, like a very competitive school. So that was my initial reaction. After that, it was kind of like, yeah. And then, you know, then I told like people at school and stuff. And after anything after like the first thing was pretty anticlimactic. When people were excited at this point, I had gotten past excitement. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Stanford, yeah. And it's really sad that like I just said it like so casually, like, yeah, I'm just going to Stanford, no biggie. So yeah, that's that. The next question is, what is student life like? So student life is what you make it at Stanford, honestly, and it depends on what communities you're involved in, the kind of friends you have, how involved you choose to be in student life or not. I can only speak for myself, and like for me, my freshman year coming to college, this is the first time you have independence. Like you're nowhere near your parents, well, if you're going to school out of state. And like, you know, I was living by myself, and that was my first introduction to parties. So I'd go to parties, I'd be like, people twerking, people having fun, what? I was like, this is my calling. If there was anyone in the middle of a dance circle, it was probably me. Maybe like 5 out of 10 times, maybe 7 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10, who knows. But like, I was just, social life at first when you're freshmen is like really exciting, and you find that as you get older over time, Stanford party life is not as poppin'. So I kind of stopped going to parties on campus. I go to parties off campus. As for like events and just student groups, there's a whole bunch of student groups. I can't name all of them, and if there's a student group that doesn't exist that you want to exist, you can make it, as long as you have like a nice little group of friends that are willing to, you know, support that hustle. As for me, my freshman year, I was a part of Nigerian Student Association. I was part of Afrobeats, which is, you know, a little African dance group. I was a part of the Phoenix Scholars, which helps first generation low income students with their college application process. I think that was the only thing I was doing at that time. And then my sophomore year, I was still in NIJA. I became the president of NIJA, co-president. I was in Afrobeats. I became a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the first and the finest, 1908, don't forget. And my sophomore year, I started working at the Center for African Studies. So there's like a lot of stuff to do on campus. You can get like an on-campus job. You could join groups. There's a whole bunch of different kind of groups. You can go to parties. I know some of the bigger events on campus is like SASA, which is Stanford African Student Association, has a culture show every year, and they usually bring like a big African artist to campus. I planned the culture show my sophomore year, which was a lot of work, but it was great. And it's fun, but it's really stressful, but it was fun. There's also Black Fest, where they bring an artist. Like this past year we had T-Pain. There's Black Love, which is usually during Valentine's Day, and they usually bring well, this past year, they brought Mario. He was like, "You should let me love you." I was like, "Yes, you can love me all you want." I was right in the front row, too. There's Frost, and they usually bring artists, but as you know, I don't go to Frost. The only time I went was when they brought Fetty Wap. You know I was there. So there's like a lot of stuff for student life. I'm only speaking of like a little that's there. There's a whole bunch of different community centers. There's the Center for African Studies, which is my favorite. There's El Centro Chicano. They're gonna kill me if I mess that up. There's the Black House. There's Flip, which is for first generation low income students. There's the Marquez Center, which is a community center for Muslim students, but I don't think it's not exclusively Muslim, but it's like a space for students. There's probably a whole bunch of other spaces that exist. There's the Women's Community Center, I believe. There's like a lot of spaces that exist for different identities, different kind of people. So it's just a matter of finding where you feel most at home, where you feel most yourself. So there's a lot of stuff, student life. There's just too much to talk about. The next question is, what did the atmosphere of college feel like? So my first thing, and even still today, I think the biggest thing, for the most part, for those that don't get homesick, I rarely get homesick, rarely. So I think it's this like feeling of independence. Like there's no one telling you what to do, which can be a good and bad thing, but it's like you're making your own decisions. You choose like how you live your life in a sense like that. So that's the like, for me, the biggest atmosphere of college is this kind of like, there's no one checking for you. Like absolutely no one checking for you. No one's going to check to see if you did your homework. No one's going to check to see if you made it back to your dorm safely. No, like, I mean, okay, that's not true. Like, you have friends and stuff, but, like, the idea is that, unlike high school and unlike, like, when you're living under your parents, like, no one is, like, telling you what to do. So I think that's, for me, that's the biggest feel of college. After that, at Stanford, I can't speak for other schools, is this like duck syndrome, or this like idea where everyone says I'm fine or I'm doing well, they're like acting like everything's okay, but like behind the scenes they're struggling, they're stressed, they're sad, like, you know, they have a variety of problems or things going on, but given this facade of like I'm doing fine, I'm okay. So that's another atmosphere at Stanford that I personally don't like, and I try not to fall into that trap. Like if I'm struggling, I'm gonna tell you. Like if I just had a bad midterm, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna act like, oh, it went well. Like I consider myself very real. Like if I'm struggling, I am upfront, and I feel like there's like a benefit in doing that, because then it's like you're being honest and other people can relate with you, and people feel more comfortable to be like, oh, you know what, I'm struggling too. So those are like the two feeling or atmospheres I get from Stanford. The next question is, how heavy was the course load? How much free time do you usually have? I feel like course load depends on your major. If you're like if you're thinking about grad school, like maybe pre-law, pre-med, or something like that, it depends on a wide variety of things. For me personally, being pre-med and a bio major, and I actually didn't declare till junior year, so for the most part, my course load on average, if I'm averaging my 3 years, was like anywhere from 15 to 17 units. And 15 units can mean different things. One quarter, it could have been like a hard 15 units where I was taking organic chemistry, bio, and something else. Or it could be a 17 units where I was taking like a 2-unit seminar. I was taking a psych class. I was taking a music class. Like, you know, so it varies. As for free time, listen, y'all. I take school seriously, but I always make time for myself, and I always make time to make myself happy, because being in school is not always the happiest thing in the world, and I always make sure I have time to hang out with friends, or go to events, or go to off-campus parties, or just sit in my room and watch Nigerian movies. Like, I think self-care and finding time for yourself is the most important thing, and I always do that. Like, I always make sure that I have time for myself. Granted, there may be some weeks where it's like I'm more busy than other weeks, but I always make sure that even if it's like I get my 1 hour of love and hip-hop in for that week, I'm gonna do it just for my sanity. Some people have less free time or choose to have less free time. I think it depends on the person, but I say it's always important to make free time for yourself and to like just get a break from school. Sometimes it leads to procrastination, sometimes it doesn't. The next question is, do you feel welcomed as a female minority on campus? I can only speak for myself and my experience, so please take what I say with a grain of salt, and do not think that my experience reflects every other Nigerian black female on campus. But for me, I didn't feel not welcomed. I felt like no one was like going out of their way to make me feel like I didn't belong, like I wasn't welcomed here. I will say I did have moments where I felt like I didn't belong, in the sense of like I felt like everyone around me was doing well or had their shit together and I didn't, or like I felt like people were doing well in a certain class and I just didn't understand why I wasn't doing well. So I've had moments where I felt like I didn't belong, or like I wasn't prepared, or just like I didn't fit here. But it wasn't like because of other people. It was more of like there was this, I had this perceived impression of how everyone else was doing relative to myself. Apart from that, I felt very welcomed, at least in the spaces I exist in. I cannot speak for anyone that's not myself. The next question is, what are your favorite and least favorite things about Stanford? So I'm gonna start off with my least favorite thing. One thing, my biggest issue with Stanford, and I feel like I've said this since my freshman year, I have a couple issues with Stanford. I have a lot of issues with Stanford. But my biggest issue with Stanford is like they welcome students of color, first generation, low income. They welcome them, but then they don't help them transition. And that was something I struggled with too, where it's like, welcome to Stanford, we're happy to have you. Now go figure yourself out. Versus like I would love to see Stanford be more proactive about helping students transition. Like I came from a small charter school of 25 graduating seniors, and I thought I was doing the damn thing at my school. All A's, didn't know what a B was, valedictorian. Like I rarely studied because things just came easy to me. So I'm thinking Stanford's gonna be in my head, I'm thinking Stanford's gonna be the same thing. And like, I wasn't understanding why I wasn't doing well. Like, I just had a hard time really transitioning academically into Stanford. And I would really love to see Stanford be more proactive and help their students of color, minority students, low income students, first generation students transition. Like, I'd love to see them say, welcome to Stanford. Now, here's how we're going to help you make sure that your transition from high school to this institution is as smooth as possible. And I feel like for some people it came easier than others. I was one of the people where it did not come easy. I didn't learn how to study until my 3rd year at Stanford. And the thing is, Stanford has so many resources, but being honest, they tell you about them like NS, like they throw all these resources at you during NSO, but it's like, at least for me, I still didn't know what existed on campus for me. And I think that's an issue if like Stanford has all these resources, but like students of color are not tapping into those resources or don't feel like those resources are for them. That's kind of a big issue. And it wasn't until my junior year that like I was like, you know what, I'm going to find these resources and I'm going to make it work for myself. And I have to recognize that that's not the case for everybody. So I'd really love to see Stanford be more proactive about helping their students transition. Let's see. My favorite thing about Stanford, okay, I'm not going to say my favorite thing about Stanford itself, but my favorite thing since being at Stanford, or my favorite experiences since being at Stanford, is the Center for African Studies. That place is my heart and soul. As I mentioned earlier, I work there. I've been working there since sophomore year. I'm still working there. And it's just, it's a magical place. It's a place like no other. Like, you can walk into CAS for your first time and there's going to be people to welcome you, say hi to you. Like, you can walk to Laura's office, and Laura's the associate director for CAS, and she will not know you from jump, but the moment she sees you, she gives you a big hug, make sure everyone in the room introduces themselves to you, like says, what do you need from me, how can I help you? Like, that is my favorite part about Stanford every day. Like, every time I wake up after class, that is the one thing I look forward to, going to CAS, like to see people who are like me. That's like my favorite thing in the world. And like, it feels good to be in a space where I can walk in and be like just all me. I can walk in saying, oh my god, I'm so tired. These professors, they're giving me P-sets, midterm. Oh, honestly, I'm annoyed. Like, I can just walk in my Nigerian accent and like people understand, or I can make a joke and people understand. Like, that's the one thing I really love about being at Stanford, is CAS. Let's see. The next question is, if you could redo your Stanford years or experience, what would you do differently? I think for me, what I would have done differently is probably reach out for help sooner or earlier, or find ways to like improve my academic skills and like my transition to college way earlier. Let's see, that's like my biggest thing. But at the same time, I'm really grateful for the experiences I had, because they molded me to the person I am today, and they allow me to help others, like learn from my experiences and not make the same mistakes, or like find ways to improve other people's freshman year, because I went through it. So I'm like grateful for like the struggle bus situation I went through my first 2 years at Stanford. But that's probably the thing I would do differently. Just reach out for help sooner, really figure out what it is I'm trying to do, or how it is I want to get to wherever my destination. As you may or may not know, my destination is medical school, so like I just really wish I was more proactive about that earlier in my Stanford years. The next question is, are there resources for minority students on campus? Like I mentioned, I think I probably said this in an earlier question, there's tons of resources, tons of community centers. It's just a matter of finding what works for you, what fits for you. But yeah. The next question is, what is your biggest advice to incoming freshmen? I got 2 things. My first one is, you don't have to know what you're doing, right? Because you're not, like, even at Stanford, you're not allowed to declare a major until your sophomore year. But I think it's smart, or it's safe, to kind of have a rough 4-year plan of potential majors or potential things you want to do, or how you like, or kind of just brainstorm what it is you may want to do in college, post-college, and have a rough draft of that so you can work towards that. And like, that was one of the things I didn't do, where I knew I was pre-med, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't really have a clear like path, or like really understand the steps I need to take to get there. So I would definitely encourage freshmen to do that. My second thing is save money. Like, that is so important. My freshman year, I didn't have a job. And my fall quarter freshman year, because the financial aid package was A1, I ended up getting a refund check. And prior to college, I had never seen more than like $500 in one sitting. So when my refund check came in, it was like $1,500. I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. Baby Jesus, I'm rich. Y'all, let me tell you, before I didn't even think of the rest of my quarter. I didn't realize the fact that I didn't have a job. I didn't think of how I was going to maintain myself. I took that money, I bought Nikes. I bought hella elf stuff that I didn't know how to use. Like, I kind of just blew that money, and I honestly don't really know where it went. Part of it was buying groceries too, because I didn't like dining hall food, so I always ended up cooking rather than going to the dining hall. But before I knew it, by the end of the quarter, I was broke. And I was just like, I don't want to ask my parents for money, because like, they got bigger fish to fry. They have bills to pay and stuff. And I was just like, I kind of played myself. So after that whole fall quarter little fiasco, I made it a point to like be very smart about saving my money. So that's the next biggest thing I would advise, is save. Yeah, so those are all the questions I got. Oh, the last question I have is biggest advice to students interested in applying to Stanford. This sounds so cliche, but just be yourself, honestly. I was myself and I got in, and I think just be yourself. Okay, so my battery's about to die, but those are all the questions. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let me know if you have any other questions. I can do a Q&A part 2. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys soon.
Yeah.